Hello everyone, my name is Justine Maillard and I'm from Université de Montréal in Quebec, Canada. In this presentation, I will report the research internship I did during the summer of 2020 under the supervision of Caroline Traube and Stephen McAdams within the context of the Actor Partnership, an international research partnership dedicated to the analysis, creation, and teaching of orchestration, which was presented earlier in this session. This presentation discusses preliminary analysis of the data collected during the initiation phase of the core project in the fall of 2019 at McGill University and Université de Montréal. The acronym CORE stands for Composer Performer Orchestration Research Ensemble. 5 universities, which are institutional members of the Actor Partnership, have participated in the CORE project. Each of the 5 core ensembles included graduate students in composition and performance who collaborate interactively to design and solve problems related to the orchestration of the ensemble. This process is repeated biannually throughout the duration of the Actor Partnership. All ensembles had the same heterogeneous instrumentation. So it's violin, bass clarinet, trombone, and vibraphone plus small percussion. The aim of the project was to compose pieces for this heterogeneous ensemble in a collaborative way between the composers and performers. The core project consists in 5 phases. The initiation phase, where the actors of the project meet to discuss their objective. The exploration and problem-solving phases, where the composers and performers experiment interactively to develop musical ideas. The realization phase, where there is finalization and rehearsal of the composed pieces. And finally, the dissemination phase, where the pieces will be performed in concert twice. Because of the pandemic, the last phases have been interrupted. Therefore, this presentation only concerns the first phase. Throughout this phase of the project, we wondered about the participants' conception of timbre and orchestration with this particular instrumentation, and the participants' vision of the collaborative process between composers and performers. In this presentation, we will only discuss data collected at Université de Montréal and McGill University. Data collection was done by means of directed interviews with the core performers and composers during multiple phases of the project. In total, 8 performers and 5 composers have been interviewed. As said before, because of the pandemic, only data from the first phase have been collected and analyzed. The questions were oriented toward the participants' conception of timbre and orchestration with this instrumentation. The interviews were recorded, transcribed, and archived for subsequent analysis. The questions were oriented towards timbral resonance, blend, attack and sustain, segmentation of musical discourse, approaching collaborative work, amongst other themes. Each interview included 11 questions. Some examples of questions can be what sounds produced on your own instrument could be made to blend together with new sonorities with the other instruments of the ensemble. Consider a situation in which the instruments start together and one plays for a short duration and the others continue beyond. What sustained sounds from the 3 other instruments could serve as an extended timbral resonance for a short note played on your instrument? Or what specific challenges does this ensemble pose to you as a performer, and do you have strategies in mind to deal with them? Verbatim from the interviews were analyzed on the basis of a qualitative research method inspired by the grounded theory. Grounded theory relies on a set of systematic inductive methods to conduct qualitative research that aims to develop a theory. This method includes 6 main stages. Codification, which consists in labeling all the elements present in the initial corpus. The analyst assigns a code to each verbatim segment, thus attributing a significant evocative attribute to each portion of verbal data. This process divides the data into manageable segments and provides quick access to the relevant information. Categorizing is where the most important aspects of the phenomenon under study begin to be named. Linking is the stage where the analysis really begins. Integration is a central moment where the essential of the subject is identified. Modeling is where we try to reproduce the dynamics of the analyzed phenomenon. And finally, the theorization, which consists in an attempt to construct in a meticulous and exhaustive way the multidimensionality of the studied phenomenon. In summary, we start from raw data and codify it. From this multiplicity of code emerge hierarchical categories that can be related, integrated to create concepts that can be theorized. Considering the great quantity and complexity of verbal data, the in vivo analysis software was used for coding and preliminary analysis. This software allows to quickly and efficiently obtain a code tree for subsequent analysis. For this project, certain references were coded in several categories when an excerpt seemed to refer to several topics simultaneously. As mentioned earlier, the questions were oriented towards certain specific topics, so certain basic categories, which might be called parents categories, emerge quickly from the data. The two main categories are sound and musical parameters and vision of the project, and they are counted in multiple subcategories. Here's a more visual representation of the coding tree obtained in the category sound and musical parameters. We can see that we have four main subcategories: notation system, the formal structure, harmony, temporal structure, and timbre. Obviously, considering the nature of the core project, the timbre subcategory is the most developed category. Throughout the coding process, we try to be as impartial to the data as possible, following the principle of the grounded theory. The subcategory orchestration, though, was purposely divided according to the perceptual grouping processes in orchestration developed by Stephen McAdams. It was obvious that the data followed this pattern and that this was the best way to classify it. According to this taxonomy, there are three types of perceptual grouping. Concurrent grouping is referring to the perceptual fusion and formation of sound events. Sequential grouping referring to the connection of sound events in continuous streams. And segmentation grouping is referring to the grouping of pieces of sound events in perceptual unit. Using the matrix coding query in NVivo, we were able to observe pattern and recurrent thematic association in the data. For example, on this slide, a matrix coding query was run to reveal the thematic association between certain categories. We can see that we have 5 references coded at the intersection of imbalance and trombone, and 10 references at the intersection of violin and trombone. This tells us that many mention these two topics simultaneously and that there is probably something to look for in these associations. While a thorough analysis of the data has yet to be done, here are some of the most significant data that emerge from this main category at the moment. First of all, the most frequently addressed themes by composers and performers are timbre, extended techniques, timbral territories, blend, and spectral continuity. In the following slides, I will present the results of 4 different matrix coding queries in NVivo related to the sound and music parameters. The vibraphone was frequently identified as an excellent instrument in terms of spectral continuity to other instruments. This instrument is also highly associated with blend and timbral homogeneity. In connection with the fragmentation of musical discourse, the themes of extended techniques and contrast were often raised. These themes were addressed simultaneously, particularly when seeking to create a break in a musical phrase or a sustained note itself. Extended techniques are said to be a good way to create a strong timbral contrast that would achieve these ends. Extended techniques are often combined with timbral territories, blend, spectral continuity, and contrast. Another interesting result is that the violin and trombone are often mentioned together as a problematic combination. Since the trombone is often associated with imbalance in loudness and register, this association can be assumed to be a contributing vector to the difficulties experienced in the instrumental duo. Indeed, the fear expressed is that the loudness level of the trombone, as well as the significant difference in register between the violin and trombone, would contribute to poor sound balance, causing the violin to disappear. Also, imitation seems to be a key to achieving blend. It seems that for them, getting as close as possible to the instrumental timbre of the other instruments is one of the most effective ways to blend their sounds. One performer expressed it in this way. It's hard to imagine a common territory between the 4 instruments, but maybe there will be a common territories between 2 or 3 instruments, and imitation could work as a communication bridge between each instrument of the ensemble. Over the course of the rehearsals, each instrumentalist has developed his or her own techniques for getting closer to the sound of the other instrument in the ensemble or to their instrumental characteristic. So now jumping to the vision of the project. Here's the coding tree that emerged from the data. We can see that we deal mainly with the attitude toward the project, the challenges, the opportunities, and the relationship between the composers and performers. In this collaborative process, the composers greatly appreciate the almost immediate feedback from the performers. They appreciated being able to exchange with the performers and communicate their idea clearly. In addition, composers benefited from the performers' expertise with their instrument, and it seems to help the creative process greatly. The performers, for their part, suggested that this collaborative process helped them to feel heard and valued. One performer said it in this way. Afterwards, on the level of the collaboration with the composers, it allows you to be, as the performers, at the heart of the creative process. In addition, this collaborative atmosphere has led to the development of collaboration not only between composers and performers, but also between performers and performers. They explored new possibilities on their own instrument, but also between instruments. This being said, almost all the performers who participated in the project expressed a certain skepticism about the idea that such a collaborative project could dissolve the hierarchical dynamic between the two parties. In the words of many of the project participants, they believe that projects that emphasize composer-performers collaboration often fail to deliver. At the end of the day, the composer is seen as the one who brings and signs the score, and the performers only as performers. Nevertheless, there seems to be a real hope amongst participants that the core project will help to soften the barrier between composers and performers. These preliminary results demonstrate that collaborative processes in music can have a real impact on the musical outcome of a piece. Composers and performers' perception of a certain musical parameters and their sharing of them can influence the creative process. The core project reveals that supporting and developing collaborative processes in music helps taking performers' view into account and values their creativity. It also ensures that playing techniques are properly and efficiently notated on the score, since everyone can use their expertise to make the notation as clear as possible. It also helps sharing knowledge with each other and helps the creative process. Finally, it also contributes to the work and to the orchestration-related problem solving. Further analysis of the interviews will examine the evolution of orchestrational thinking from the perspective of both composers and performers and analyze more in depth their collaborative dynamic in a problem-solving situation. We'd like to thank all the student performers and composers who took part of this project at UMcGill and U of Montreal, as well as the faculty member, technician, and actor postdoctoral fellows who supported the project in many ways. I would also like to thank the Observatoire Interdisciplinaire de Création et de Recherche en Musique for the research internship scholarship which supported this work. We thank you all for your attention and we are ready to take your question.